Hello everyone, FTDZMMAY here, back with some more Bloons TD Battles 2 content. Has been a while since I've actually made a Battles 2 video. Last one I made did pretty well. It's just kind of Battles 2 recently hasn't really been too fun or interesting to really play. Simply put, I'm just kind of waiting for, farm and more sub nerfs, as well as some hopefully just buffs to some underused towers like Super Monkey. Let's see, Dart Monkey as well. It's just kind of waiting for some new buffs. But anyways, I'm coming at you with Boomer Sub Glue gameplay. Now, Boomer Sub Glue, in my opinion, is probably like the greediest pure eco strat you can actually play, and in compares to like alt eco, in my opinion, like sniper farming. It's just really kind of that good. Of course, a variation of this is Boomer Sub Ice as well. Now, kind of looking at this strategy, it seems like it's more so kind of a combination of Boomer and not Boomer. Sub and Glue being good. If you do remember, there was a strategy called Boomer Sub, not Boomer. If you remember, there was a meta strategy that was Druid Sub Ice. That was a meta strategy back in the day, and that's kind of the same thing with here. Is it kind of utilizes same towers. You can use Boomer Sub Ice, but I've used Ice a lot, and I was just like, I'm feeling like using Glue today. And so of course, that is what I go for. But Boomer Sub Glue really is a greedy strategy that allows you to really go heavy on just kind of eco early game, which is really what the strategy is about. And it kind of is draining your opponent for the early game, so they're very vulnerable for late game rushes. Looking at the strategy at first, it seems like, well, how in the world do you beat round 30? But really, it's just kind of first strike micro. The cheapest way to beat the strategy late game is really just bad, F bad, which is a really expensive rush that really only farm players can really achieve. That's kind of the thing, that the strategy can really only be countered by farm players, which isn't really a good thing, considering that, farm is meta and pretty much everyone's running farm. Even if it isn't Druid farm sub, you have Heli Ice farm, Ninja Alk farm, what else, Starling NG farm as well. Pretty much every meta strategy is a farm strategy. So hopefully farm, or at least something, gets nerfed so that way we can actually have some more interesting metas, and hopefully pure eco and alt eco is actually kind of getting the spotlight for once, as it hasn't had the spotlight for a while. So what makes this strategy so greedy? Well, simply just put it, Boomer is really good early game. It is absolutely insane the amount it allows you to greed. Like, I feel like the upgrades are like fairly priced to the point towards like you can full on eco for pretty much the majority of the game, and you'd pretty much be fine. As well as if you're running like Glue or Ice, you can very easily stall the rounds using just like with the 0-0 glue gun, like I'm doing here. And Basalt is a pretty good map for that. Is that the AI rounds get stalled for an incredibly long time, and it can get stalled even longer if you go for 002. So really, it's just those two things that make the strategy insane. And put it also, your camo detection is incredibly cheap as well. All you have for camo detection is submerged support. And then for round 11 and like 13, really Morgulaves is really more good enough than in order to actually be able to beat this strategy. And so also Oben too is also incredibly broken. It's kind of funny seeing that you can actually, that Oben's genuinely the best hero when using this strategy. So just because Brambles has like a bajillion piercing, Trees eats up an insane amount of RBE. Even after the nerfs, I still do feel like it swallows a bit too much RBE down, but NK disagrees, seeing as they would have nerfed it more, but oh well, what can you do about that? Skipping over to round 16, I have $6,000 and 1600 eco. At this point, I could genuinely switch over to pinks if I wanted to. I would gain 2k eco fast enough in order to easily be able to sustain peaks, but I really don't. So just because I do play cautiously when playing this strategy, I'm not really sure what my opponent is going to do, especially since we're so close to Moabs. I definitely need a Moab press like ASAP. Just kind of getting one down, just kind of in the center there, just to hopefully really quickly place it down. But he doesn't seem too interesting, seeing as he goes for pinks himself. But of course, I am going to force up some defense by sending a Moab. That's really what this strategy is about. Sending Bloons really doesn't really hurt you too much, seeing as again, you can eco so heavily with this strategy. Having 2k eco round 17 and $7,000 in the bank is absolutely insane. I could start ecoing with zebras or purples to increase my eco even further. And so really just like this is like really honestly comparable to alt eco like Heli or Sniper. And so it's kind of crazy that it's kind of the case. This guy goes for 2 mobs, which is a bit scary seeing as I only have like 1 press on strong. But you know, B missile is good enough to where, you know, it's easily able to clean up, and that's just kind of the thing as well. And of course, Oben's totem, you know, slowing down mobs, which is really kind of underrated. Or maybe not underrated, people know about it, but no one really just talks about it. And so of course, as you saw there, you know, that defense alone just kind of ate up pretty much all my cash. Went from like 8,000 to like nothing. Round 21, you know, he sends a BFB, and I must say, I do like the Shark BFB skin. I don't think I actually bought it, but it's kind of whatever. At this point, you just get down to his second mob press is the thing. You know, defense with this isn't really too expensive. Most of what your defense is going to be pretty similar for all the tiers. It's just, you know, stalling. Here I get a mob glue, as I'm not really sure if 2 presses can infinitely stall a BFB, but it is able to. I decided to retaliate by sending him just a normal ZMG on this side. I did want to save some cash. We've been pretty, I guess, semi-aggressive this game. This is actually probably the most rushing I've had in battles too. And so he does first strike it, which is expected, you know. Of course, you know, it was worth it to force him to actually buy that first strike, even though he destroyed it instantly. I still do feel like I gained in the long term because of this. So you should always force out defense when you are rushing your opponent. Fortified cerams are a bit scary, but then again, you know, glue in the back is easily able to do this. So for 26 is coming up pretty soon. What do? Simple, super glue. You kind of have to afford super glue by 26. So if you've been too aggressive, or if your opponent is absolutely draining you, you definitely are gonna die to 26. But you know, seeing here, you know, having 4k eco by the way, you're on 24 is crazy. And you know, imagine if you had village instead of sub, you would have even more. Unfortunately, village is pretty bad in my opinion right now. It definitely does need some it needs some, you know, like early game buffs. You know, it should have cheaper playdown price. You know, it shouldn't be like 1200 to place down. I think that's how much it is. And camo detection option is 2 option. 2k for D camo is insane and costs way too much. Alright, so it is round 27, 5k eco and $55,000. I sent out some fortified cerams to kind of pressure him and hopefully get him to defense. If you saw there, I spent way too much on fortified cerams. I definitely did not mean to spend that much. I really wasn't paying attention to my cash, which really did screw me because I only had like 2 rounds in order to actually be able to save up enough defense for, you know, round 30, which did kind of scare me. I was like, dang, did I screw myself? Because I really did have a lot of money in order to like infinitely send as well as, you know, defend on his side. Thankfully, he doesn't actually send me any tight ceramics on my side. If I did, I definitely would not be able to afford Glaive Lord in time, so I'd have to panic sell. And if I did panic sell, you know, that'd cue him in that, you know, hey, you know, I'm struggling a bit. He decided to start ecoing like kind of a lot later. He stopped ecoing a lot later than I did. I want to be safe and just kind of I just want to be a bit safe and just kind of, you know, stop way beforehand. Thankfully, by the time, you know, 30 was able to show up, I basically set up like $5,000. But you know, if I did hold on to the money, I would have like $100,000. So on round 30, I was easily just gonna be able to send him like, you know, bad, F bad, which is the cheapest way that I found in order to actually beat Boomer sub glue or Boomer sub isolate game. So just because, you know, the amount of first strike micro they have to do, most players can't actually do, which is understandable. I immediately send him an F-bat, just kind of test his micro skills, see where he's at, maybe get him to choke, but I kind of doubt it. He sends me a regular bat on my side, which is easily defendable, although I will say, you know, I definitely don't have nearly enough money in order to actually be able to defend this, which is a bit worrying. Thankfully, bats are slow, and I can easily just kind of wait for the first strike cooldowns to come back. I didn't even really bother selling it too much. I was just kind of having it there. Having a bunch of 0-0 glue, not glue, subs down just to do kind of whatever. And so here I was just deciding, you know, why not just first strike micro, kill this. And so if you do look on his side, once I close out the first strike tab, you know, he also was easily able to defend his. Sending him another bad as well as a F bad, just to get him to you know, again, first strike micro pretty hard here. Again, sending him the rush that basically kill the strategy, even if you don't do, you know, like properly, like, you know, bad F bad, still you do pressure him quite a lot. It's around 31, and most strategies can't really survive all this far unless, you know, it is like a purposely late game strat, like, you know, attack ice village or heli ice village or something along those lines. Over on his side, I'm surprised that he didn't really send me any DT, since I did sell pretty much all my defense in order to be able to afford this rush. I guess he wanted to defend this rush on his side. He does pop the F bat, but you know, the regular bat is still going pretty strong. He gets a perma charge on his side, which was a bit interesting, but he ends up dying to DETs. Is wondering why Super Glue wasn't able to catch those. Alright, so another match. This guy is going Ice Sub. His name is Mortar OP, but spoiler, he doesn't use Mortar this game. Kind of a bit disappointing, as I would love to see Mortar actually be used in a viable comp. Even after the biggest one buffs, I still don't think Mortar is still that amazing, but that's just kind of my personal opinion. The stun from biggest one is pretty cool, but then again, biggest one is like, what, like 30 something K, and like in total when including like, you know, big one and shell shock and all that. It is kind of a shame, as you know, the third tier top path, I can't remember what it's called. Shell shock. Shell shock is actually pretty good for the early game. Back in season 2 when I was running, you know, Mortar, Dartling, Druid, Shell shock was kind of my go-to defense for like round 11 and round 13. So, which combined with, you know, HRP did pretty well. I was kind of happy with it. And so I do love to see, you know, someone using sub as more than just like, you know, D camo and first strike, and using sub as like a DPS tower. I'm not really familiar with Ice Sub, but it does seem pretty good, seeing as, you know, for 13 and whatnot, you can do shards as well as a B missile, and you know, shards is pretty good. Unfortunately, not every tower can pop frozen, but that's where B missile comes in handy. I'm not really sure if you need shards, because B missile is still really good. So round 18, saw he was getting Chinooks up, decided to send him a F Moab simply just because I had excess cash, and I figured, hey, why not? He's not gonna rush me with the Moab press on the screen. So just kind of send him one, hopefully force a shove up, but he surprisingly doesn't get it and opts for getting armor piercing darts, which is a bit interesting as he barely defends that. Seeing that, I was just like, oh, it's round 19, how about you defend 2 F Moabs? I really did want to force that Moab shove out just to hopefully delay his next Chinook. So I sent out him another one, seeing as he got a downdraft, and he greeds and goes for the second Chinook. He is able to get away with it, but he does have to waste a tower boost in order to do so. So I decided to let him be and was just like, you know, I'll just focus defending on my side just in case he sends anything. And still having, again, $7,000 and 3k eco in 19 is quite a lot. Honestly impressive how much money you're just able to generate with this strategy alone. So in round 21, with $17,000 to spend, having a lot of excess cash, decided on round 22, I figured I'd just send him kind of a fortified BFB. He only has 2 Chinooks, which isn't really too much for round 22. He gets a embrittlement, and so I guess he plans to defend this with kind of heli. But although a mistake I see he makes is he shoves the BFB out of range of embrittlement, so he's not getting that +1 damage that he normally would. Decided to send him another BFB to see what he does. I knew he was gonna first strike that ZOMG, so I figured, hey, I'd see what he does against the BFB as well as the Moab insides. He does have trees, but of course trees doesn't swallow up unlimited RBE, even though it feels like it does. So I decided to send him another ZOMG and yet another one, just because I have so much money to rush with. I even started selling, you know, stuff to afford it, because I didn't really want this game to go too late. I ended up leaking a ceramic and dropping down to 4 lives just because I wasn't really paying too much attention to F-Storms on his side. But I'm surprised he hasn't really sent anything at me, simply just because I do have, probably just because I have a lot of money to really spare. Even though I did sell a lot of stuff in order to afford it, still was, still again, just having this amount of money. I guess he plans on first striking, and I guess he miscalculated and ended up popping the ZOMG into fortified BFBs. Again, sending another ZOMG just with the excess cash, is seeing what he does. I was kind of surprised he didn't just start selling everything to like get Marine or Apache Prime. Though he does get Apache Dart Ship, but he gets it kind of a bit too late. By this point, you know, you're not really going to be able to... Apache Dart Ship's not really that amazing, so he ends up dying. But this strategy just really kind of shows you, you know, just how much money you're able to generate utilizing, you know, Boomer's insane early game and, you know, Sub's incredibly cheap D camo. It's absolutely nuts.